someone please explain to me why we live in a world where Space Jam got a sequel, but Megamind didn't? I don't know if I'm alone on this, but I hate the term guilty pleasure. To me, like a lot of buzzwords commonly used on the internet, it gets used so many times and so flippantly that it loses its point. In this case, it's been broadened into, I like a film with a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes, well aren't I quirky? Newsflash, even the best of films have flaws in them. There's a reason I use the term not favorite in my Meet the Robinsons video. If you like a movie with issues that don't enervate your enjoyment of it, then there's nothing wrong about that. You know, unless that film is, I don't know, Birth of a Nation, or the Percy Jackson films. However, I've recently found a film so flawed, so unpleasant at times, and yet so enjoyable that I can only classify it as a guilty pleasure. On a completely unrelated note, Space Jam 2: A New World Order is the 2021 LeBron James and Warner Bros. Crossover fanfiction and spiritual successor to the 1996 cult classic Space Jam, and just like its predecessor, this film has been hotly debated all across the internet. Is it a grand old time with the Looney Tunes gang, or is it just another embarrassing testament that nostalgia will sell anything these days? If you didn't watch the first 1 minute and 16 seconds of this video, the answer just might surprise you. You're watching the LionDog Show, and I watched Space Jam: A New Legacy. What did I think? The movie unsurprisingly follows basketball player LeBron James, who's dealing with familial issues as he wants his youngest son to follow in his footsteps of being a basketball star, while his son wants to be a game developer. Oh no! Also, don't worry, this film treats game development with the same respect and care of a Disney Channel show. Anyway, LeBron and his son visit Warner Bros., where an algorithm played by Don Cheadle tries to convince LeBron to appear in WB-themed Grubhub commercials. After LeBron refuses such an enticing offer, Don Cheadle traps him and his son in the serververse.
Never heard that one before.
And he'll only let them out if LeBron beats him in a basketball game. Also, Don has this little sidekick named Pete, because the world needed more Minion knockoffs. Yeah, this movie so far is awful. For starters, it's 2021 and we're still making stories where the main conflict revolves around a kid not wanting to go into the family business. You know, just because you're a follow-up to a 90s movie doesn't mean you can use a royalty-free conflict from a 90s movie. And then there's the scenes at WB, which are basically corporate propaganda. And that's coming from someone who finds the Universal Studios joke from the Cat in the Hat movie funny. Everything from the posters covering the lot to the line about them making all of our favorite movies really shows a complete lack of shame. Contrast that with Looney Tunes Back in Action, a film that also spends a majority of its first act at Warner Bros. Throughout that first act, they waste no time making fun of executives, cash grabs, and even specific films. If Space Jam 2 even included a little bit of that kind of self-awareness or humility, it would have gone a long way in making it not feel like one big WB circle jerk. Granted, a mediocre story and obvious pandering can be improved with some good comedy. I was audibly groaning at almost every attempt at a joke. When it wasn't an already dated modern reference, it was a chuckle-worthy line that got dragged out by obvious ad-lib. At this point in the film, I almost considered backing out of the film and going on with my day. But then, a miracle happened. Bugs Bunny arrived. As soon as Bugs appears on screen, the film instantly began to turn itself around. Bugs' subplot about him losing all the other tunes to Don Cheadle and he and LeBron gathering the gang back together was charming. It gave me real Muppets 2011 vibes, and I really liked that. Wait, Muppet movie from 2011? 2011? Man, where does all the time go? Also, Bugs refers to the others as his family. That's just wholesome. I enjoyed the scenes where they travel into the other Warner Brothers films. Sure, it's kind of self-promoting, but the Looney Tunes have done this sort of stuff with DC characters all the time, so it wasn't that out of left field. Besides, if they're going to be kissing their own butts, they might as well have fun with it. I thought the film selections and the characters for said films were fitting, and they didn't overstay their welcome. It also served as a neat way for the animators to shake up the art style. After watching the Wonder Woman scene with Lola, I will only settle for a Spider-Verse sequel with 2 2D animation. Speaking of the animation, they knocked it out of the park with the 2D animation. I know some people didn't care for the more saturated colors when compared to the colors in the first film or back in action, but I personally liked it. It helped everything pop a bit more than usual, especially when compared to the live action and CG portions of the film. Plus, 2D animation in a theatrical film will always be welcomed with open arms. The film also gets a lot funnier. Yeah, we get a big Chungus joke, but it goes on for 2 seconds at most. It's about as harmless as the Sonic reference in the Sonic movie. The Looney Tunes' style of slapstick and dialogue humor shine brighter here than in the first film, and the Looney Tunes' first practice shows that off perfectly. Heck, Don Cheadle even got a few chuckles out of me. He's probably the best non-Looney Tunes aspect of this movie. Like a lot of parts of the film, he isn't that good, but he's having such a good time that it's hard to complain. I can, however, complain about a few issues with this part of the film. First, we got Lola. Now, despite the controversy with her casting, I thought Zendaya did a pretty good job in the role. Granted, she did a good job in the role of stale white bread because they somehow gave Lola even less character than in the first Space Jam. Now, Space Jam 1 Lola wasn't this well-written, complex character, nor could she ever compete with her Looney Tunes show counterparts, but in her surprisingly limited screen time, she was shown to be spunky and have a bit of a sense of humor. Now, she's just strong woman, which isn't inherently bad, but when you're amongst characters with big, colorful personalities, you're going to stick out, and not in a good way. Worse than Lola, I just feel like the whole Looney Tunes subplot, while charming, was painfully underutilized. I'll go more into it later, but I saw way more potential with that concept than what made it into the film, especially with the Warner Brothers worlds. It also felt a little worthless since this doesn't come back later in the film. Once the Looney Tunes get back together, they act almost like they never left, making the whole section of the film feel like filler. Fun filler, but filler nonetheless. But who cares about the plots? No one watches Space Jam for the plot. What about the basketball game? Is it any good? Yeah, it's good. I enjoyed it. It made staying through the mediocre parts of this film almost worth it. Right off the bat, those CG characters look great, except for Lola. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong with her. They struck a perfect balance between realistic and cartoonish, and that also applies to how they're animated. The antics the Toons get into are great. Almost everyone had a moment to shine, and it felt more akin to Looney Tunes than anything in the first film. Yeah, that's really all I have to say on the game. It was a ton of fun, and would have been a great way to cap off this rather bumpy film. But that's not all there is to it. Just as it felt like this film finally got into a groove, all of my issues with the first act started to seep back in as if just to ruin my good time. Let's start off with the Warner Brothers characters. They are pretty much non-existent. Not to say I didn't enjoy seeing Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin hanging alongside Don Cheadle, but all the characters just feel empty as they never interact with the game in any meaningful way or say anything. They feel like NPCs to artificially make the film seem bigger than the first. It would be like if the Avengers was a cult classic 90s film and then got a sequel a few decades later, but instead of expanding the cast of Avengers, the new characters just hang out with them for a minute or so and then they spend the final battle spectating without contributing to the fight or saying a single line. Wow, I can't think of a better way to make a movie more exciting. Speaking of making things more exciting, Don Cheadle randomly mentions that if the Looney Tunes lose the game, they get deleted. Why? Don Cheadle refers to them as rejects, so I doubt getting rid of them will affect his goal to gain popularity that much. It's just another shallow way to raise the stakes. Now, the issues I've mentioned so far haven't affected the game, so what issues did? When I reached the big game, I checked the timestamp to see that the film lasted another 50 minutes, and I felt those 50 minutes. The "we suck because we haven't learned a lesson about being ourselves yet" section of the film stretched on for far too long, and even when the Looney Tunes started acting loony, I still noticed parts where it dragged. It did not have to be this long, especially when the game in the first film wasn't longer than a half hour. The lack of momentum doesn't help the game either. Every time it would start to pick up, it would stop to remind you of the message. It would stop to remind you that Don Cheadle is the bad guy. Or it would stop to remind you that the name Michael B. Jordan sounds like Michael Jordan. Admittedly, I did chuckle a little at that joke. Wanna know what didn't make me chuckle? All the lame jokes, because some real duds found their way into this part of the movie.
Haters gonna hate!
But those setbacks pale in comparison to the dumbest thing this movie does. Spoilers for Space Jam Episode 2 A New Hope, I guess. So in order to score the winning basket, someone on the Toon Squad must perform a glitch that will render Don Cheadle unable to stop them. However, in doing so, the performer of the glitch dies. While LeBron accepts the role of the sacrificial lamb, they keep cutting back to Bugs, and I thought to myself, no, they're not really gonna kill off Bugs Bunny, are they? They kill off Bugs Bunny. and they treat it like a true tragedy, as if they wanted to make the audience care about the character they gave up on developing halfway through the film. Warner Brothers expects you to see this as a devastating loss, when in reality, it comes off as, once again, a cheap and shallow way to raise the stakes above the first film. Now before you start sobbing into your Bugs Bunny Funko Pop, don't worry, Bugs comes back to life, because as a Toon, he survives everything. So what was the point of having Don Cheadle kill the Looney Tunes if they can defy death? Where are the stakes in this game? Where are the stakes? Oh yeah, that's the end of the movie, I guess. Yeah, this movie is a real mixed bag. I'll admit that I was a little excited for this film. I love the Looney Tunes and I wanted them to be in a good, fun movie. Unfortunately, this film isn't good enough to be a legitimately good movie, but I also don't think it's consistently fun enough to be a good popcorn movie. It tried too hard to be both, and it ended up being neither. If I had to pick the biggest sin of this film, worse than the lame story, the bad jokes, or the corporate shilling, it would be the fact that this movie, much like its predecessor, is not a Looney Tunes movie. It's an NBA star fanfiction. That means that this film focuses more on a vain attempt to make a wealthy sports celebrity into a relatable everyman, while the truly entertaining and likable characters get the dramatic table scraps. Which really sucks, since underneath this film's mediocrity, there lies potential for a great Looney Tunes movie. And to prove so, first, we're replacing that useless LeBron flashback with an opening that serves as backstory to the Looney Tunes. With this, not only do the Tunes show up far sooner in the film, but it also introduces the characters to the youngsters who are seeing them for the first time. In this opening, Bugs narrates the Looney Tunes' history as we see them grow throughout the decades. But as the backstory goes on, we also see how fast Warner Brothers' library of IPs grows throughout the decades. While they see this as exciting at first, they soon find themselves receiving less and less attention by the year in favor of the shiny new IPs. Tired of being ignored, everyone except Bugs slowly leaves to find work and respect throughout the serververse. For the father-son drama with LeBron, the conflict changes to be more about him thinking that game development is a waste of time. Now son, why would you waste your life creating new games and experiences when you can just keep consuming the same game that has been played for nearly a century? When he meets Bugs, Bugs agrees to fight Don Cheadle mostly since he thinks that by winning the game, Don will boost the Looney Tunes' popularity. We won't touch the scene of the Looney Tunes and different properties, except for one moment. When Lola sees Bugs in the audience, she loses her concentration and then gets hit by an obstacle. On the ground, Lola begins to act cuckoo, as most Toons do when they get hit in the head, as all the Amazons laugh at her for acting like a Toon, showing us that the Toons are rejects, rather than telling us. After being humiliated, Lola accepts Bugs and LeBron's offer, more so since she thinks that showing off her skills in basketball will convince Wonder Woman to make her an Amazon. When we reach the game, if the Toons lose, Don Cheadle will simply just delete the Looney Tunes world. You know, I never liked this place. It's too toony. That stuff doesn't sell anymore. Maybe I'll put another cinematic universe here. Or, you know, whatever's big at the moment. That way, we still have big stakes, just not shallow, unrealistic ones. With the game itself, to better integrate the Warner Brothers crossover into it, they could add power-ups that summon WB characters to help them, like assist trophies in Smash Bros. They could also just add WB-themed items on the court, like Daffy could grab a green power ring and turn into the green Loon Turn, or someone could grab the Time Turner from Harry Potter and get into a bunch of time travel antics. Just something to make this game feel like it couldn't have been done anywhere other than the WB servers. In the locker room scene, as the Toons get ready to give up and accept that nobody wants them to be Toons anymore, LeBron then steps in and tells them to never stop creating the thing that brings you joy, and soon realizes how horrible he's been to his son. Lola then chimes in to say a speech about how you must embrace who you are even if the world thinks you're crazy, and soon realizes how horrible she's been to herself. No Michael B. Jordan though, sorry. As for the Porky Pig rap segment, it's actually staying. There's a purpose it can serve. During the rap, the spectators will be confused and appalled by the train wreck they're witnessing, except for the James family, who's genuinely enjoying it. Then, after the negative reception from the commentators, we see the Looney Tunes congratulating each other for the successful rap, depicting how they don't care as long as they're entertaining some people. We'll also include some moments for Lola to let out her Toonie side in the presence of Wonder Woman, and for her to put her Amazon training to good use during the game, slipping in a subtle layer to the message that it's okay to try new things from other worlds. Wreck-It Ralph 1 rules don't apply here. For Bugs' death, while the other Toons start to mourn him after he leaves, Bugs then just walks in frame and the others just start talking to him as if nothing ever happened. Then Wonder Woman approaches Lola and offers her a spot as an Amazon, which she turns down to be with her family. Aww. The final scene with LeBron and his son remains mostly the same, except that Bugs wraps it up with a voiceover about how the Looney Tunes world gets back to normal that transitions into the final joke where it's revealed that Bugs now teaches the Joker about comedy. With this, it's now a more Looney Tunes focused film about being proud of the art you create, even if it may seem useless to many, and a subtle meta-commentary on WB's apathy towards the Looney Tunes in the presence of their big IPs. Now I want to make it clear that I don't see myself as some amazing screenplay writer, I just wanted to show the potential with this film to be better than it was. I only wish that Warner Brothers could have seen the potential it had. You know, the more I think about this film, the more I start to appreciate the original Space Jam. Sure, it's an awkward, weird, and sometimes creepy product of the 90s, but it's a movie that knew what it was. It didn't have a forced message, it didn't have any drawn-out drama, and it didn't overstay its welcome, things A New Legacy failed to imitate. As for A New Legacy, I'm glad I watched it. It was nice to see the Looney Tunes in a mainstream event, but that doesn't hide the glaring issues with the story, pacing, and executive filth of the film. Add that with all the behind-the-scenes troubles like Lola's original actress being replaced after recording all her lines, and multiple animators including Looney Tunes veterans not being featured in the credits, and you've got yourself a film that I can't help but feel a little guilty for enjoying as much as I did. Also, the director apparently wants to make a third film involving Dwayne Johnson, and between you and me, I think it would be a great idea. With how violent and slapstick the Looney Tunes are, I'm shocked the idea of them wrestling hasn't been done before. I'd love to see that film. After another proper Looney Tunes movie. Did you guys know that in November, Looney Tunes Back in Action will be legally old enough to drink in Canada? It's been that long since we've gotten a theatrical film that actually focuses on the Looney Tunes. Listen, I know the Space Jam films have their fans, I completely understand that. But for me, the Looney Tunes stand as a prime example of how the best characters work well in any scenario. It would be a waste to restrict them to only be in wacky sports films. It would be like if the only Mario games to appear on home consoles were the sports games, and all the mainline games were stuck on mobile. So, what's the future of the Looney Tunes on the big screen? For the time being, all we can do is sit back and wait for more information on Wile E. Coyote vs. Acme before it probably gets cancelled. Overall, if you're looking for a consistently fun and entertaining Warner Brothers cartoon crossover, then you're better off checking out Jellystone on HBO Max. 5 out of 10, good crazy fun, just not as good or as crazy as it could have been. Maybe that Looney Tunes cartoon movie will make up for it. Oh! I forgot the actual worst part of this film. LeBron, you wasted a perfectly good Game Boy. Yeah, I know your friend gave it to you with a copy of Bugs Bunny and Crazy Castle, and I hope you're no longer friends with that guy, but you could have just switched out the cartridge for, I don't know, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins? Just a thought. Okay, that's all the time I've got. I gotta get back to watching all my favorite Warner Brothers movies and Warner Brothers TV shows on Warner Brothers streaming service, which Warner Brothers gave me for free for saying Warner Brothers so many times. You've been watching The LionDog Show. Have a great day, and please go watch Looney Tunes Back in Action. It's a great movie.